Okay, and we're back, and it's COMP308, and it's week 8, lesson 8, part 4. And we did almost everything right. A couple parts that we were missing for most generic systems was this one Npm Install Express generator -g. So let me do that for you guys. So I'll do that here on the Mac, on the Windows side. I'll do that from scratch again. I'll start from scratch one more time. And I think it's important we do this right, because if you do this wrong, right, then you guys are going to be on a different page than me, and that's not good. So first I'm going to Control-C out of this thing, right? And I'm just going to do a CLS for clear. CLS, clear screen on a PC, right? And what I want to do is kill my Express demo. I made this Express demo file right here. I'm going to kill it and start right from scratch. And of course it's open somewhere. Oh, I'm inside the folder. I'm going to kill my demo. Let's try this again, one more time. Okay, now in here, let's suppose I didn't install my Express. I need to issue a npm install -g express-generator. Right, so that's the first thing you have to do. And it's going to go through it. By the way, I can do this as many times as I want if you notice. It's not going to hurt me to do it again and again. Right? Why? It's going to check to see what version I have on there, and it'll install the latest version. So now if I go express -- version, right, it'll bring up 4.1.12, which is a better version than what I had, my Express generator. Okay, that's cool. Now the next piece. I can use Express to generate my stuff, right? So here's where I'm going to do it. I'm going to say Express, right, -e for EJS, and now what I want my app to be. It's going to be called Express Demo. Let's try this together. Express Demo, one word, right? When I do that, it installs all my stuff. Here's my folder, and it says, run the app like this. Well, this is cool if you're using a Mac, but we're not using a Mac. We're using Windows. And for the Windows option, if you look here on the Express website, it says, this is what you need to do. Set debug is equal to my app and node when you're running it, okay? So let's leave that up. First, we need to do an npm install here, because I've got to go to my Express website, my Express folder. So Express demo, right? And then once I'm in there, I got to do an npm install. Npm install downloads and installs all my dependencies. Okay, now that I'm in here, I'm just going to do my next command, right? If you notice, it's still here. It says, I need to do this debug is equal to express demo : star, and then this, // Okay, cool. That's cool. I don't mind doing that, right? But I need to also add in, instead of the .star, right, I need to go debug is equal to whatever my app is called, the ampersand, node, and then ./bin/www. Let's do that together. There's a reason for it. So if I go do that, I go set debug, right, capital D, capital E, all capitals, equals to, no spaces, whatever my app is called, express demo, right, and node, right, space, dot, bin, www. Let's make sure it's correct before I press enter. It's the wrong way. Should be like this, it says. And press enter. Okay? And if I've done everything correctly, and if it's not wrong, which I think it is wrong, right? Huh? It's running? Let's see if it's right. If it's running and if it's correct, I should be able to go into localhost 3000 and run my server. And if you notice, it does give me my server right here. All right? And this is what you want. You want to be able to get your server running. So their server's running, you're getting a response back here. How many milliseconds it took? It says a code 200. This is good. A response code 200, and I know it's hard for you guys to see this thing, right? Response code 200 means I'm receiving the proper response from the request. And a response code 404, that's a typical response code that means site not found, right? So these are codes we already know, right? 200 meaning it's proper response. 404 or something else means it's not the right response. Okay, but this doesn't do anything. We just have this little lousy website right now called Express. let's analyze this a little more and see what's going on. All right, so I'm going to kind of exit out of here. I'm going to Control-C to come out of this thing for a second, right? Put this aside, leave this window up for a second, because now I don't have to type that command anymore. I just have to kind of, I can just tab up, right? If I just arrow up, I can see that. Can someone grab that door, please? Can we grab that door? Because it's too loud. Okay, so I'm going to put this command on the side. I'm going to pull up brackets. And right now my brackets is targeting my other folder, right? And what I really want it to do is I'm just going to go into File, and I'm going to say Close All. That's the first thing I'm going to do. And then I'm going to go into my Express demo, which is right here, and drag and drop it inside my brackets like this. Now, this is what I'm actually showing, my new Express demo project in brackets. That's what you should see. Are you with me? It's important we stay together because we're going to kind of accelerate after this, right? Okay, cool. Let's take a look at these package folders and so on. I got my package.json file, and it shows me a bunch of dependencies as well as a version number. I know that I can probably do this manually and type in my versioning and all that kind of stuff. But I want to do a couple things here. First of all, I want to set my folder up. Let's just do a review from yesterday. I want to set my folder up as a Git folder, right? As a Git repository. So how do we do that? Do you guys remember how to do that? If I want to set up my folder as a Git repository from yesterday, how do I do that? Git init, right? So now it says initialized empty Git repository, and this is my location. Okay, that's the first thing I want to do. Because we want to use Git. We want to get into the habit of using Git, because when we use Heroku, once you guys sign up for that, you'll see that there's a reason we can actually send things right to Heroku from command line, right? Which is the right thing to do, okay? So Git init. Now I want to do Git. I want to create a Git ignore file, right? Because if I don't create a Git ignore file, it's going to send all my stuff, all my Npm modules and everything else to Git. I don't want that. And I do that here inside my brackets, right? So I'm going to right-click down here in brackets, new file. I'm going to create a new file called Git ignore. Right? In my Git ignore file, I want to include things that I do not want to send up to Git. So Node modules will be one of the things I do not want to send up to Git, ever. And like I said to you before, you probably want to send up this ds store thing. And just to give you the proper spelling of that from a Mac perspective, if I go into my terminal on Mac, because you might be using a Mac in the future or whatever, I want you to get used to doing that. Otherwise, you're going to send all kinds of extra information you don't need. If I go to ls.al, if I scroll up, I see this ds, capital DS, capital S. I want to not include those files from a Mac perspective up there. So I want to do that, capital DS, capital S, right? Now you can ignore this one if you're not ever going to use a Mac. Then the DS store file is unnecessary. But to me, I like to include that just in case, you know, a user downloads my stuff and he's cloning his repository. I want to have this git ignore file here too. Okay. Here's another thing I can do right now. I can also include a Readme file. I know I'm going to need one, right? So I'm going to go right-click, new file, and I'll say Readme. I'll call it readme.md for markdown. Press enter. It's a markdown file. I know that if I use one hash mark like this, that's like a headline 1, an H1 tag, right? And I can call this, you know, Express demo, and give you some space in here and talk about what this thing is about. This project is a demo project to show or Express.js functionality we used the Express generator npm to create this project. Okay, you can put as much information as you want. I'm going to put Control S for save. So I've got my README file and my git ignore file. Now let's go back to terminal. Okay, here's my terminal, my command prompt, right? And if I do a dir, I see all my git ignore, all that stuff is good. I did my git repository, it's initialized, right? Now I'm going to do git add, right? Git add. Let's put this way up here so you guys can see it. Git add dot. And that adds everything, and you might start to see some of these errors where it says LF will be replaced by CRLF and all that. You don't worry about that. And the next thing is if I go do a Git Status, right, it shows me everything that's inside my staging area. Let me just reset my colors so you guys can see it. I know color is difficult for you guys to see this online on the board. So just be patient with me for a second while I reset the colors here in my terminal. Console is 20. This is the way it is because it changed the colors when I do my commit. Okay, so I added my stuff here. So if I do a git, hopefully it's not going to change them back. If I do a git commit now, I have to do my initial commit -m. The right thing to do when we start off a Git repository is do an initial commit or first commit. Both ways are acceptable. Initial commit, right? And press enter. And it adds all this stuff in there. So now if I go to git log, right, it shows me that I have one commit. Here's my commit right now. And my author, who am I? That's me. Sleopoulos@hotmail.com. Hey, it actually remembered me for this for the first time, right? And it says, warning, my terminal is not fully functional because I'm not using a Node terminal. I'm just using a regular prompt, command prompt. Okay, cool. Let's do the next piece. So I've done a git init, a git add dot after I've got my git ignore. And now I need to send this up to my master. Well, how do I do that? I need to, the easiest way to do it is go to GitHub. This is the easiest way. And in GitHub now, I'm going to create my new repository. Here's my new repository. And in my new repository, we're going to call this, just call this Express Demo. Right? And press create repository. My repository actually gives me some instructions. It tells me what to do. It says, do this, do this, do these, do my first commit, right? And then do this, git remote add origin, and here's my my origin, right? And then do this, push my origin master. So I want to do these two things, and you can also do it like this. I'm going to kind of grab these things, Control C, go into my terminal, right-click paste. So there's my git remote. I'm adding my remote. I've just done that, right? And now I'm going to do the same thing with my push. I'm going to take this command here, Control C, go back to my terminal, right-click paste, and then press enter. And now it's going to push everything after I put my username in again and my password. Yeah? When I go back up to my terminal and my browser and refresh, I see that I have my Git repository set up properly. I have an Express demo Readme file that tells people what I've done, and I have my all my files that I've created up here on GitHub. If you notice, I do not have my Node modules because I included them in my git ignore file. These are my two things that tell GitHub not to include Node modules. I don't want to send those up to GitHub. Yeah? Okay. So we're good. We're set up GitHub. Now I want to do something else. Inside my terminal window, I know that I've already got a package.json file. Here's my package.json file. And typically, when we set up a new project, what do? If I do something like npm init, right? It's going to take me to ask me for my files again. I can recreate my JSON file, right? It's not going to do anything wrong, okay? It's going to help me with my JSON file again. So I have some piece parts of my JSON file that are missing because I didn't do an npm init. It was generated for me with a generator, right? So what I want to do here is leave my name alone, and again, you can change it if you want. My version number, I like to start at 0.0.1, so I'm going to change that. My entry point right now is app.js. Let's leave it alone, right? Here's my Git repository. Hey, I picked up my Git repository because I have a Git. Didn't have that before. I'm going to press enter, right? My keywords I'm going to leave. My author is me, so I'm going to put my name. My license is an ISC. I'm going to leave it. I don't need a license right now. Press enter. And And then it's going to say, hey, do you want to accept all this stuff? And of course, I'm going to say yes. When I do that, guess what happens? My JSON file has just been changed. Take a look. This is my JSON file, which is, hey, doesn't it look like what I was talking about at the beginning of class? Which is a bunch, it's an object. Because remember what JSON stands for, JavaScript Object Notation, right? So I've got a bunch of these objects, these key value pairs here, that are properties from my file. So my name from my project, my version, is it private or not? Here's my scripts. This is the script that I'm running. This node.bin www. That's what that does, right? My dependencies that I've loaded in already. Here's the description of my project, right? This project, this demo project, show Express.js functionality. Look, right? It took that from my Readme file, my readme.md file. I didn't type that in, right? My main, here's my main, which is the first thing that runs my app.js. And here are all my dependencies, right in here. These are all my dependencies. Okay? So actually, I've got my dependencies here and my dev dependencies here, developer dependencies. Okay? Different kinds of dependencies. We'll talk about what those are later on. Here's my author, my license, and any bugs, right? I can go to Express Demo. Here's GitHub on expressdemo.issues. It's a bugs URL. And also, of course, my home page, which is my GitHub account, my GitHub, and it picked all that up from my .git folder. Because as soon as I initialize my Git repository for my folder, it picks all this stuff up and puts it inside the JSON file. Do you have the same thing? Okay, this is good. Yes. You're all good. Okay, good. Okay, I know I'm going slow, but I need to do this stuff so you have to see my steps, right? Okay, cool. If I run it again, I'm just going to page up or arrow up until I get my command that I want, which is this one. Set debug, right? Express demo and node, www. Press enter. Now it's running, and if I go back to my browser, and if I go to localhost 3000, right, I get something called Express. And it kind of shows me my feedback, my messaging is showing up here. That's sending messages from my browser into my node server and back, right? So it's saying I'm issuing a get command, right? I'm trying to get the information from my browser, what site I'm looking at. In this particular case, I'm also getting my style sheet that's being called. How do I know all this? I'm getting this stuff. Well, it's actually quite simple, right? If I go to, if I go here, right, and if I go into my views, take a look at my views folder. I have two. I have an index.ejs file, right? And this index.ejs file, what does it look like? It looks like a regular file, doesn't it? Right? Pretty simple. Now, I want to include Bootstrap here in my EJS view, right? Here's my first view that I'm looking at. By the way, we're going to redo these folders as we go forward. But I want to put Bootstrap in here. How do I do that? Right? Well, there's a couple things I could do. I could use a generator for that. But for now, I want you to do it manually like you've never done it before. Why? Because it's better for you to figure this out. Now, we know we have Bootstrap in our other demo called Node demo, right? Because I've already got this stuff right here. So I might as well, since if you have Node demo with me, you can do this, what I'm going to do now, or you can download and install Bootstrap from scratch, whatever you prefer. I need a couple things for Bootstrap. I need my Bootstrap and jQuery. I need those two things. So I need those in my JavaScript library. I don't have that in here, if you notice. I have an EJS folder. I have a couple other things. So I have a roots folder. Here's index.js and a users.js. I also have a public folder, right? Here's my JavaScripts and my style sheets, and this is where my style sheet lives right now. Take a look. Here's my JavaScripts and my images. I don't have any images there yet. So I need to probably put this in my JavaScripts folder in my public folder. We'll talk about what these folders do in a second. So I need to kind of copy these things. I'm going to kind of copy them, right? And I'm going to put them inside my folder called Express demo. I'm just going to go to my folder directly. Here it is. I'm going to go into public, into JavaScript, and paste, which kind of shows up, if you notice, on the bracket side, right? So I've got my JavaScript. I also need a couple of other things. One thing I definitely need is my CSS. So here's my CSS, my bootstrap.min. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go back over here into my style sheets and press paste, right? So I got my Bootstrap, and those are really all the things I need for Bootstrap. Let's do Bootstrap from scratch. Here's my header, and if you notice, it says EJS on the bottom of brackets. It shows you that it knows it's an EJS file, right? I need to include, though, if you notice, funny enough, even though my href, my link for my style sheets, it's saying it's in style sheets. Well, but style sheets is inside of this public folder, but it's not showing that that's true. Why? Because the way we've set up our index.js for routing. So here's our root, the first root we have, and if you notice, it says we use this router.get command. Okay, even if you don't know what this means for a second, just follow me here. The first thing I do is I do this. Whenever we set up a new server, we have to set var express. We declare an express variable, and we use the common.js require method to require the module express. That's the first thing we do. The second thing is we kind of declare our router. Here's our router. Our router, we're going to use the Express router module that's built into Express. Once we've got that, we can do a router get, and we're listening for, this is what we're listening for, right? This is our home page. So anything that just goes right to our home page, the forward slash here, right, says that if I go to my home page, I'm going to listen for, here's this anonymous function we talked about earlier today. Here's an anonymous function, right? It's going to have three pieces to it: a request, a response, and the next function it's going to go to, right? And here I have my response is I want to render what? My index, right? And I have a variable, here's my variable that I'm sending over to my index called express. Well, I don't want to just have express in here, right? I want to change this to express demo. Let's do that change. So here's my express demo, right? And if I go back to my browser for a second, I just saved it, right? First, I can't run this thing. If I go to localhost 3000, what's going to happen now? Is my server running? The answer is no, right? Or maybe I did leave it running. Let me see. I did. I left it running. But if you notice, it just says express. It doesn't say in here express demo. This is a variable actually that's going in here, right? In order for me to see that change, I got to go Control C, right, and go up and launch my module again. And when I do that, I've got to refresh. And when I do that, I see express demo, right? I'll show you the piece parts of how this works in a second. I'm building an index.html file, but in piece parts. I've got a .ejs extension. That's my template engine. That's my template, or my partial, if you will. Okay, here I am. Look, here's my index.js. Back to this. Index.js is where it shows me my first root. Okay, if you notice under roots, there's a file called index.js. Okay, so my first root is the / root. It means the general root. When I hit port 3000, it takes me to my first page, which is called index, right? And index, this render index, right? If I use the render command, I'm going to render anything inside my views method, my views folder, which is this index.ejs. And if you notice, I've got this funky little command in here, right, that says welcome to, and then here's the title, and I'm using this less than % equals and % greater than sign, almost like we did in PHP. If you've ever done PHP, you use the less than question mark, right, as an example for PHP. Well, this is exactly like we do PHP, what we do with JavaScript. Okay, kind of thing. One thing I want to do here for you guys, because I know sometimes it's difficult for you guys to see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to go into preferences. because one thing I want to do is I want to make my my screen, my fonts a little different. Go to themes. My font size right now is only 13 pixels. I think I'm going to make it like 18 pixels because I think it's too small for you guys to see. And I'm going to change from there's brackets light and brackets dark. You can actually install other themes as well, right? And my font family is this source code family. I'm going to press done, so now you can see my stuff a little better. Is that better? So I mean, I was struggling just seeing it on my screen. Never mind on you guys, right? Okay, so if you notice here, I've changed my font and everything else so you can see it, but I've got my style sheet, and my style sheet's pointing to style sheets, not to public style sheets, because public, right, that's part of my folder structure. And where that's defined, just to let you know, is in app.js. Let's take a look at this, right? So my app.js file is the first thing that kicks off, right, when I run my file. So I have two piece parts to this whole puzzle, right? One of them is my root, which is this index.js inside my root. This tells me how my root will function, right? This actually tells me where my partials sit, right? My first template, which is index, right, sits inside my view, which is right here, okay? But my app.js file, what that does, it tells me the path to everything else. So I've got my favorite icon. If I want to use my favorite icon, I can define that. Right now we're not using it. I've got a logger called Morgan. Not using that right now, really. I got a cookie parser and all these other things I'm going to use. My roots, here's my roots. I've defined my roots as ./roots index. So whenever I start doing my roots, that's where it's going to look for any routing information right here, right? I have users, but we're not using that right now. And then I define my app as an Express app. These are all variables that I'm creating. So when I do my requires, each of these variables now have methods associated to them when I include these modules, because each module is a class, right? Okay, here's where I start off. I use my logger, as an example, as a developer. I can use it in production as well to give me back, feedback. I'm using my body parser to read in my JSON file if I want to read any JSON files for data management, right? As an example. And if you notice also, I have this, I'm using my static method of the Express object, and I'm saying join up whatever my directory name is with public. So I don't have to put public in my path. It's part of it. I don't have to do this. I don't have to say, whenever I do a route, I don't have to use the public word in there for my module. I'm basically saying that the public folder is invisible to the people outside. It's almost like it's part of my path, and it's a separator, it's a container for all the stuff that's going to be viewed on the outside, other than my views. All right? I know this is hard to digest, but once you've seen this a couple of times, and I'm going to document it for you nicely on the PowerPoints too, you'll see what I'm talking about. So these app.use application modules that are part of Express are all commands that are being issued. So I'm saying, hey, use logger, use body parser. These are all different modules that I've defined up here. First, I require them. So I create a reference, a link between this variable Express and this module called Express. I create a reference. That's the first thing I do. And then after I create the reference, I can use it down here when I use app.use. And of course, app is just an object, the new application object that I've created. Right? Again, this is something you've never seen before, so it's looking foreign to you at this point. Right? When you first look at it, you're like, wow, this is whacked. This doesn't look like anything I've ever done before. But don't worry about it. This is all server stuff. You don't have to worry about this piece. This is what's controlling your server. All right? Okay, here's a catch-all root. I've got a couple of roots. I go app.use, /. If I have a /, I take it to roots. And in my roots folder, it's going to be caught by my index.js. I define my root in here. Okay? In my app.js, though, I define them. So I have, here's my first one, this backslash. The other one I have is users, right? And if you look at users, if I go to my roots for users, it says, it goes here and it says backslash, and it responds with a resource. It says get users listing. Well, we don't have any users right now, so it's going to respond with nothing. For example, if I go back into my my path here and I go backslash or slash users, right? It says respond with a resource. There's nothing there because that's what I've told it to do. Look, it says right here, send respond with a resource. So it's doing what I'm telling it to do. When I put users in, that's the path I'm giving it. It's going to respond exactly how I'm telling it to. Okay? Let's go back to app.js. Analyze this a little bit more. So I've got a couple of roots that I've kind of hit on here right now, right? I've also got this catch-all root, this catch 404. So anything else, if it's not part of my root, I'm going to kind of put together this function that says, here's my new error message. I'm going to say a new error, if I've typed new error, and my status is going to be 404, and I'm going to basically show this new error as not found. So if there's anything else, here's my error handler that I've created, I'm going to pump out this error to the users, whoever uses my website. Okay. Right now, if you notice, I'm using my development version of my code. If I say if app is equal to development, right? If I go into development, then I want to render my errors a little differently. And you can actually switch. This is actually an if statement that's saying if I'm in development mode, and I can set up my environment variable, which we'll do later on, to show that I'm in development mode. It'll do something different than when I'm in production mode. All right? Right now I'm in development mode, but I'm not telling it I'm in development mode. And I'll talk about that later as well. So I'm just analyzing the file right now so you understand what it all means. Okay, here's my development error handler. Here's my production error handler. There's two different error handlers that I have depending on which mode I'm in. Am I in production or am I in development? Right now I'm in development, but I'm not really telling the computer I am, right? Because I haven't issued an environment command, which we'll talk about later on. Okay, so a couple things. This is the server. This piece here, this app.js piece, it's setting up my routing, or my routing, however you want to say it, and for my server. So let's add another route. First of all, let's fix up my index.ejs file, which is right here. Here's my index.ejs file. I want to add in Bootstrap. Now I know I have Bootstrap in, but I know also that I don't have to use the public path, the public name in my pathing for me to add in CSS because it's part of my path. It's already included. I've kind of paired it up with my directory structure, right? So I don't have to use path, just like I'm not using it here. Okay. I want my custom style sheet, which is, let's go to my custom style sheet here, right here, to do really nothing right now. Right now it's just giving it a bit of padding and all this kind of stuff. I'm just going to kind of cancel this out for now and make it empty. This is going to be my, I'm going to just kind of put it in here to say, this is my custom style sheet, which I have, it should be pretty blank right now, okay? So nothing should be in your custom style sheet right now at this point, okay? The next piece is I want to add in the style sheets, link the style sheets to my Bootstrap and everything else. So I've got a bootstrap.min.css, right? And that's what I want to add in here into my index.ejs, right? So I'm creating a Bootstrap kind of project, right? So I'm going to kind of go into and say link, right? And my style sheet is going to be where style sheets. It's not going to give me routing because it's thinking I'm not in the proper place, but don't worry about it. Style sheets, and I've got to put in bootstrap.min.css, right? Now again, I'm not using the / or public route, path because it's included in my path name. Okay, so I've got my style sheet, and of course, in style sheet order, I should put the Bootstrap style sheet first, and then mine if I want to override its basic styles, right? Just like we normally do. Okay, cool. Now I want to add in my Bootstrap and my jQuery stuff at the bottom, right? Because remember, when I do Bootstrap and jQuery, I do it here at the bottom of my file. Let's do that. So I'm going to go, instead of link, it's script, right? And in my script, I need a source. So here's my source equals to, and it's going to tell me, well, where is this source for my script, right? If I start typing backslash, it's going to show me different piece parts. Well, I want to, let's for now, just to make it simple for myself, if you just wanted to use the public for now, we can take it out after. I can go public, and then JavaScript, and then I want to include jQuery first. That's the first one. I just want to just take care of the public, just get rid of it, because I don't need that, right? From a routing perspective. And I want to kind of Control-C, Control-V, and this time, instead of jQuery, it's going to be Bootstrap, right? So Bootstrap is the second thing. Dot min.js. Okay, so I've got my Bootstrap. It's enabled. Now it's inside my file. I've got my h1 tag, and I've got this funny symbol here. Whenever I want to include code, like this is a variable title, right? This title variable right now, I need to use less than %equals. Okay? If I want to include something else, right, like a partial, I don't need to use this. I can use something else in here. We'll talk about what that is in a bit. But for now, whenever I use, think about this, whenever I want to include a variable like title in my title bar, I need to use this less than %equals and finish it off by %greater than. That's our EJS, or Express. It looks like PHP, right? It's very similar to the way we do PHP when we inject interactivity or variables inside of our PHP. We do it this way, okay? And we'll talk about that in a bit, because you can inject an if statement like this too, right? When we do EJS or Express, if I want to put a loop, if I want something to loop, as an example, like I want to show a bunch of links, right? Well, I can create my outer link. So here's my unordered list, right? And then if I want to do 4 links or 5 link items, right? I can simply do this, right? %, right? Here's my first thing. I open a %, and I start going with a regular JavaScript. Let's write the JavaScript. For, here's my for loop, right? And I go var index is equal to 0, right? Hear me out now, guys. Index, let's say I want to add 4 of them, is less than 4, right? Index plus plus, that's a loop, right? And I need, of course, my opening brace, right? Here's my opening brace. Well, guess what? I'm going to put that in a % symbol. So that's my first line. And in here, I'm going to put in what I want to copy, right? Which is my li. So let's go my li tag. Here's my link item. And in my link item, I want to kind of put in the name for my link item, which is, I don't know, first item for now. Let's say I want to put first item 4 times. Don't worry about this, what it's going to do, right? And afterwards, I want to kind of do %, and then, of course, my closing brace, right? Because I want to link, I want to do a loop that includes the link, all right? Check it out. Can I do something like this?
That needs to be the bracket.
Oh, sorry, the other way. The other, facing the wrong way. How's that? That make sense? So let's see what this does when I generate my EJS file, right? So I'm going to kind of save. Now, I have to regenerate my server for a second. So let me some server changes too. So Control-C, move up, enter, right? And when I go back here, I'm going to go back to localhost 3000 and refresh. And now I got first item, first item, first item. So the power of EJS is I can inject JavaScript code very, very quickly, right? Because we know JavaScript. So now I can use JavaScript throughout my code inside my index.html. It's one language that I have to know, JavaScript, and I can do that on the fly. I can do all kinds of stuff with interactivity with EJS. All right, so I haven't really implemented my Bootstrap stuff yet though, right? Let's go back, because I haven't finished it off. Yeah, I got this first item or whatever, but instead of first item, this is interesting, why don't I just loop the index? So instead of first item, I can say item 1, item 2, item 3. Let's do that. So how do I do that? Well, I inject just like I did before. Let's see if you can figure it out. Now, it's a variable. And variables have to have the equal sign with your injection. So it looks like this. Equals, right? Index, right? Percent close. Does that make sense? So I'm taking the index and I'm injecting it in between my li. Let's save this. Now I haven't made any changes to my server, so I can just refresh. Make sense? 0, 1, 2, 3. That gives you a lot of power when it comes to running functionality, JavaScript, right here in the console, right? It's almost like I'm writing inline JavaScript, but I'm not. What I'm doing is sometimes I'm running certain things that I want to run, and I can pull information from different sources for me to run these things and create my content. Okay, this is cool, but now I want to use my Bootstrap, like I said. Well, in order for me to do that, I can just wrap it in what I normally do. I create a div tag, and if you're using Emmet, you can just do a dot for the class, and it automatically installs a div tag. So if I go dot and the class type, so I want to say content dot container, right? It adds in a div tag with the class of content container. Now I can take all this stuff and put it inside my div tag, right? And let's just make it so it looks nice, right? So it's kind of spaced properly. So it's kind of, it looks right, right? From a indentation perspective. Okay, that's cool. We've got my container, but now I want to set up these UL, this unordered list. You know, as an example, I mean, I can set it up so it's in the same column. I'm going to take up 12 columns. If I just do this and I save it and I go back to the browser and press refresh, I'm going to get a little bit of spacing on the back end now because Bootstrap has taken over and started to apply styling, right? So again, I'm starting to run with the Bootstrap stuff as I go. Okay, so what have we learned? Right? EJS is our templating engine. If you were to use regular Express, if you generated an Express folder without using the -e, what would end up happening is you would get a Jade template engine, which is totally looks different than this. To me, EJS is way easier to use, and it looks like HTML like we know. So that's why I prefer the EJS templating engine. And unfortunately, we can't look at every single templating engine and every option, so I'm not going to cover Jade. If you want to cover Jade for yourself, you can certainly go online and look at Express. There's all kinds of documentations on it. Let's go back to our Express thing here. If I look here at the Express generator, it talks about how the Express generator works. Like I said, how it installs your packages and so on. It also does things like if I want to do a first hello world, it shows you how to do a hello world without the generator, right? It also talks about some basic stuff, some basic routing. So here's some basic routing, right? I've got a backslash or a forward slash, if you will, that tells you when a forward slash command comes forward what to do. And I've got this other one, app put, if I want to send a request back to the user, right? And also I have a delete. I can delete or add a user if I want to. We'll talk about that later on. So routing is pretty straightforward. It talks about how to do that. It talks about how to use static files, right? So if I want to use public, here's my static file. I can use this app use command, which we're going to go over, right? And then if you want to use the guide, it tells you how to attach things like middleware and template engines and so on. Here's using template engines. This is a key point. Here's Jade, right? The Jade templating engine. This is what it looks like. Take a look. Does that look like HTML to you? Yeah, kind of, but without the tags. And this can be quite confusing for people who've never seen it before, right? So that's why I use EJS instead. The other thing that you want to look at from a guiding perspective, the API reference is actually quite good. So if you're actually to go through and take a look at what an application looks like in detail, it'll tell you here what each of these commands mean. And we're going to have to do that over and over again. So be prepared to look here with me. So if I look at an app get and see what it does, it says returns the value of the name app, right, setting, where name is one of the strings in the app settings table. For example, app get title and then app set title my site. title would be the variable that we're using, right? So if I want to inject other variables in my code, going back to what we saw in brackets, and if I go back to app.js, right? App.js sends up some basic routing and so on. But inside my routing, in my index.js, I have this render, and if you notice, I have this title. This title in my rendering is a variable that I've set up to say Express demo. I can set up additional variables like this, right? Because this, here, let's just add it in here so you guys can see it. Now I'll really confuse you, right? This is actually an array of objects, right? So here's my object array, and I can add in another, instead of a title, I can also put I can use a name, right? And I can say my name is Tom, right? So I've just kind of added that in there. All I've done is space this down to add an additional key value pair, right? Now if I want to use that in EJS, right, how do I do that? Well, it's fairly straightforward. I'm going to go into my index.ejs file, and where I want to have a name, so here's my title. I can say welcome to blah, 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 and then next to it, I can put a space, and then percent equals, right, name, right, percent greater than sign, right? If I can type name properly, how about that? Right, here's name and title. And let's see if that made a change. So if I go here and refresh, I break it. Why? Because I didn't reset my thing. So I made a change to the routing. Right? Let's try this out. Go back here and refresh. And now it says, hey, welcome to Express Demo, Tom. Right? Here's my, where it says that, right? Welcome to Express Demo, Tom. Why? Because I added in a new variable that I declared here inside my root, which is right here. So here's my root, my index.js file, which is under roots. And here's my express, here's my first variable, title, and I've made another one called name. And you can make as many of them as you want. You can also read them in, right? Key value pairs you can read in from a JSON file, which we'll talk about, a flat file, and how to do that. So this is the beginning. So EJS is our routing engine that we're going to use, but we're going to do a little bit of EJS and Express, but our real front-end engine that I want to use with you is Angular. Okay, that's what I really want to use. And you can actually, we'll talk about how to incorporate Angular into our workflow next week when you guys have done your course. So again, due date, next week by Tuesday when we meet. Over the weekend, the due date for your Dropbox that I'm going to put together is to do that course from Code School, which is part of the Angular.js thing. If you don't know how to do that course, if you haven't finished it, I'm not going to give you the marks. We need to do that because I want to try and give you incentive, 2%, right, just to do the course. Because if you do the course, then we can get going with Angular. Otherwise, I'm going to spend another week with Angular, and we're going to be behind. I don't want that, right? So you should know what Angular looks like. Okay, so we did it kind of backwards. We did a bit of a tutorial. Now I want to do a little bit of some theory for the last few minutes, right? So let's take a look at the PowerPoint that I'm going to put up online. So we used Npm, right? Here's where we used Npm. We installed the packages. We did all this stuff already. Again, I'm going to put this available to you later on. We talked about managing dependencies and how the dependency will show up in your package.json file. Right, here's another dependency. We haven't used grunt. You can also use the keyword latest, so the latest version of Express, the latest version of grunt, and so on, right? And if you keep going, you can do this npm init command, which is what we did, to set up our package.json file that basically tells Node what our project looks like, what piece parts are part of our project, right? And there's some examples here that I'm going to share with you later. When we do an npm install, anything that's inside of our package.json file in the dependency section will install in our folder. We can also do an npm update because sometimes what happens is we install some local dependencies, but they've updated them. Like the people, the developers, are constantly updating your dependencies, your modules that are out online. Okay. If you want to install a dependency, then with the npm command, you can use install whatever the name of the file you want to install ---- save, and it'll actually be part of your dependency. It'll actually include it inside your package.json file, right? Because your package.json file controls everything that's included in your application. Okay, cool. We've talked about node modules. One of the things that when we use Express is built on something called the COMP308 module, which is part of JavaScript. And there's 3 components to that now, right? There's something called the require method, right? Which is what we've been using. A variable equals to require and the module, right? That's what it looks like. There's also the exports module, which is allows you to expose different pieces of our code, right? Back and forth to different modules, exports. And there's also the keyword module, which allows us to basically declare what our modules look like. So those 3 things are part of our COMP308, which is a project that we were working on in 2009. The people who were developers worked on this project that put it part of or included it as part of JavaScript libraries. Common JavaScript. You can use this in regular JavaScript too. So this is what it would look like. Here's our message, right? Our message is equal to hello. We can say exports.sayHello is equal to this anonymous function. Here's anonymous functions again. And then here's our console.log message. We can send off to the console that says, here's our message. So we expose our say hello module, right, to the world with the exports keyword. All right? I'm not going to go too much more in detail here. But the core modules, there's a bunch of core modules that are also included in Node.js, right? Now, we're not going to typically need to use many of them, right? Because remember, we're going to be using MongoDB, and we're trying to use MongoDB on the cloud. I want to get you to that point, right? Within a couple weeks, we're going to be talking about that. By the way, from a course perspective, we're sitting at week 8. Week 9, next week, we're doing Angular all week, right? Week 10, we're doing Mongo all week. Mongo, connecting to Mongo, all that kind of stuff, and Mongoose. Week 11, we got a guy coming in from Microsoft, right, to talk about Azure. All right, yeah.
Is there any way we can do the Mongo? Like, even a project on Mongo?
I can't because I've got so many other piece parts to it, right? Otherwise, if I do Mongo first, then you're going to have to go back and do Angular afterwards, and it's going to be a mess, right? Yeah, you'll get Mongo in a couple weeks. But Azure, the guy from Azure is going to come in. He's going to come in on either the Tuesday or the Wednesday. We're going to be talking about what he's going to come in and talking to you about on probably this Friday. I'm going to talk to him about what he's going to come in. So he's a Microsoft evangelist. He's going to talk about Azure. He's going to give you access to the Azure cloud system, if you will, services. And I'm going to try and work it so that we can set up our Node site for your final project and MongoDB using something like MongoLab, right, through Azure, right? I'm going to give you 2 options. You can use Heroku, which we're going to give you. It's a kind of a free online kind of cloud service, right? And there's also Azure. And Azure is something for you guys to know. If you guys understand Azure, then it's another thing, another little feather in your cap when it comes to going to interviews and you know, kind of declaring your skill set in your resume. Okay. All right. So we talked about Node. Sorry, I'm running a little bit over. We talked about Node. This is your typical Node server. We've seen this before, right? But now what we can do is with Express, it's a lot easier for us to use Express to develop our web server. I'm just going to go kind of forward here. And again, if you notice, we can use this Kinect module. We didn't actually include this Kinect module in our server, but if I want to, let's use the Kinect module for a second really quickly, right? If I go to my command prompt, Control-C, so I'm out of my server, and now I want to install a new module. Let's do it together. So I'm going to go npm install ---- save, and I install something called Kinect, and enter. What it'll do is it'll go to the internet, grab Kinect, and install it as part of one of my dependencies. Now when I look at my package.json file, I notice that I have Kinect in here as one of my dependencies. If you notice, the dependencies are in alphabetical order, right? And the Kinect module allows me to use the same kind of stuff that I can do with Express with the basic common.js and Kinect module, right? So here I am. So the Kinect module does almost, in fact, Express.js is based on Kinect. That was the first module they ever came out with. And Express actually, what it does is it extends the Kinect functionality with additional modules. Okay, so that's what Kinect is in a nutshell. We're not going to go too much into that. I just want you to know that Kinect, the Kinect Npm module, and EJS, Express, are related, right? So if you ever hear something like Kinect, what is Kinect? Kinect is just another module, another Npm module that Express is based upon. Okay, and when we get into Express, I'm just going to go into here, we have to create something called middleware, which is where we connect, we use a route to connect to our objects. So we go into that thing, and in here, when I put this up online, you can read about Express. We're going to talk about it again a little bit next week as well, because we need to. From more of a functionality perspective, I want to kind of discuss how we can do partials. Right now, we only talked about how do I inject code in Express, and we're going to use both Express and Angular when it comes to making our front end, right? So let's take a look and see. If you notice, this is what we were doing here in Express, and down here I define what the application object is and what each of these things really do. Yes?
When will you give us
Your assignment?
the assignment or the outline for the project as well?
Yeah, I've got all that ready to go. I've got all that ready to go.
We'll start next week.
The only thing with the assignment is that when I put the assignment together, I want to do kind of an Angular assignment, like angularize your you're looking at, he's shaking his head. Why are you shaking your head? You're shaking your head. No, I want to angularize, if you will, and use Angular and Bootstrap for your portfolio project that you have right now. You've already done it with Foundation. You've done it with jQuery Mobile. Now you're going to do it with Angular and Bootstrap, right, as a front end. That's going to be your next assignment, right? So how do I do that? But in order for me to give you that assignment, I want to give it to you next week. It's only going to take about a week to do. But I want you to learn Angular first, because if you don't learn Angular, and if I give you an Angular assignment, you won't start anyway. So for me to give it to you today, I could do it, but
if it's ready.
it's ready. I have it ready to
then,
go. I have it ready. I really do. I have it ready to
I'd
go.
like to read the assignment before, and then when you explain something, then I can
How
see how I can relate
You
it.
link it to the assignment. Okay, no problem.
Getting a week to do it?
Jesus, man. Are you in trouble again?
7 other courses, sir. 7 other
No, I'm just kidding.
5 other courses.
I'm emphasizing 5.
I'll do my best. How about that? I'll do my best. Maybe I'll give you 2 weeks. All right, that's the most I can give you. Because then you have to start off your final too, right? You only have your final assignment that includes MongoDB and a whole back-end database and stuff like that that you can choose, right? That you can work with somebody else on. It's not something that you have to do on your own, all right? So it's an optional group assignment, all right, for the last project, okay? Now remember, there is no exam for this course, so the last project takes the place of that. Any questions before we move on? Again, we're going to cover a little bit more of Express and EJS before we get into Angular next week. Remember that Tuesday is going to be your due date for Angular training. So please have all your Angular training done over the weekend, over the next couple days, right? So that when we hit Tuesday, you get all your marks. Okay, and I'll put them up on Dropbox for you. Any questions?
No questions. Can I make a small announcement to the students?
Want me to start? Can I stop recording?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. All right.